welcome to the Fretboard Journal podcast. I'm your host, Jason Verlinde. I am happy to announce that today I'm talking to somebody who you all have requested more than any other in the last few years, Tom Bukovac. Ever since Tom started his incredibly popular YouTube channel, a whole lot of you have been emailing me saying you need to get this guy on the podcast or the Truth About Vintage Amps podcast or in the magazine. Took me long enough, but I've got Tom on the show today along with Guthrie Trapp. They just put out this incredible new record called In Stereo. I want you to all go check it out. And I zoomed in with them from where else? They were at a recording studio in Nashville with guitars in hand. They were having a good time. And we had this conversation about In Stereo, but also just about the Nashville scene, how Tom moved to Nashville, what it takes to be one of the great session guitarists in 2024, how to balance your work and your life and all that other good stuff. It's a good chat. I hope you enjoy it. I have a whole bunch of announcements I need to share with you all. First off, our 54th issue of the Fretboard Journal. Hopefully you all know about it. Peter Rowan's in that issue. We have the most incredible photo essay from the most incredible guitar store in the UK that you would ever be lucky enough to get into. We have Matt Sweeney. We have Margaret Glaspie. We have Rudy of Rudy's Music in this issue and so much more. Go to fretboardjournal.com and click on the subscribe button. If you don't see it at your favorite local guitar store, tell them to carry the Fretboard Journal. Have them reach out to me at podcast@fretboardjournal.com. Second big announcement, our Fretboard Summit, my dream guitar weekend, which I've been working on for over a year, is taking place in just a couple of weeks. That's August 23rd to 25th, 2024 in Chicago at the Old Town School of Folk Music. Now, as with the political world, if you've already made up your mind and you know you can't attend or you know you are attending, this message is not for you. But for you undecided people out there, whoever you are, whether you live in the Chicago area or whether you just love to do last minute trips, let me try to sway you. This is turning into the most epic weekend imaginable. I can't think of any other weekend where an average person not in the industry can go and try out and meet 80 different guitar makers, guitar brands. We don't have sales reps at the Fretboard Summit. This isn't like a string changing clinic at your mom and pop guitar store. Bob Taylor, founder of Taylor Guitars, is there. You can meet him. Andy Powers of Taylor Guitars is there. You can meet them. Thomas Ripsum, the CEO of Martin Guitars, is at the Fretboard Summit. The people who actually work on and create and design guitars attend this event because they want to be at it and they want to meet you. And in addition to all of that, we have round-the-clock programming with some Fretboard Journal contributors and experts and incredible musicians teaching master classes. Joe Glazer, who often is featured in Tom Bukovac's videos, is doing a pop-up thing with Brian Gallup where they're really going to geek out on stuff. We've got music by Blake Mills, Colin Hay, Joe Henry, Valerie June, Adam Levy, Rhett Scholl, Molly Miller, on and on. I could go on forever because the spreadsheet I'm staring at with all of the Fretboard Journal highlights just goes on for pages, and we cram it all into 3 days. There's no other event like this. It's not a Lutherie showcase. It's not a rock and roll fantasy camp. It's something totally different. We've put our own spin on it. And if you want to be a part of it, there are still some 3-day passes available at fretboardsummit.org. The individual concert sales have already sold out, but you can get in by getting a 3-day pass, and then you can just go to every concert, and somebody is going to win this killer Yeniziello electric mandolin that Joe Yeniziello graciously made just for one of our 3-day attendees. That's late breaking news. We're giving that to one of our 3-day attendees. It's going to be amazing. I've already teased some photos on my Instagram about it. All you got to do is sign up, folks. This podcast is brought to you by Seattle's own Mike and Mike's Guitar Bar here in the Pacific Northwest. Located in the Fremont neighborhood of Seattle, they've got a full-service repair shop. They've got an ever-changing inventory of cool electrics and acoustics and synths. We've had Mike Ball, the founder of the store, on this very podcast. Check that out and check them out at mmguitarbar.com. Stringjoy Strings is offering you all 10% off of your first order at stringjoy.com. All you got to do is use the promo code FRETBOARD. Stu Mack is sponsoring the show once again. They're going to be at our Fretboard Summit, actually, building a champ kit all weekend long. Come say hi to them. Peghead Nation, my favorite guitar instruction portal around, is offering you all your first month free or $20 off of any annual subscription. All you got to do is use the promo code Fretboard when you check out. So many Fretboard Journal subjects teach on Peghead Nation. It's kind of incredible to see. And last but definitely not least, our friends at Collings Guitars offering a new wood, pecan, I don't know how you say it. I think that's a regional thing. But it's rare for any guitar company to announce a new wood in their lineup, especially a cool domestic wood. Check out their Instagram as well. And again, if anybody's coming to Chicago, you can meet Steve McCreary and Aaron and Nully and all of these people you've heard about on podcast before. The whole crew is there, and Collings, more than any other brand traditionally, has pulled out all the stops at the Fretboard Summit, unveiling guitars just for the event that have never been seen before and constantly blow minds. So please come see them at the summit. Again, Tom Bukovac and Guthrie Trapp are on the show today. The album is called In Stereo. Go find it. All right, guys. How are things going?
Great.
You're in some studio somewhere in East Nashville.
We're at the Cabin Studio, owned by our good friend Matty Alger, and we actually have Steve Mackey that played bass on a lot of these songs is here. We're about to record some new songs here. As soon as we hang up with you, we've been working on some stuff, and so this is a studio that we love. It's kind of a private boutique spot here in East Nashville, and it bleeds creativity, doesn't it? This space
makes you want to create when you get here.
Yeah.
It does.
Before we talk about In Stereo, you guys are like, especially because of your separate YouTube presences, you're like the epitome of all that's cool in Nashville right now. But how did you guys get to Nashville? Like, tell me where each of you, like, tell me your journey before Nashville.
Well, I started playing in cover bands when I lived in Cleveland till I was 24 years old. And I was doing that, trying to make a sorry living playing, terrible cover bands for a long time. And I always knew that there was a lot more that I could be doing, but I probably should have moved away from home earlier, but I waited too long and moved out of there when I was 24. And I considered going to LA and New York, but Nashville just seemed more like the right fit for me. And moved here when I was 24, 1992. And all I wanted to do was get a road gig with somebody. I didn't care what it was, as long as it was something professional. And it took about 4 or 5 months to make that happen. And then I just sort of leapfrogged from one road gig to the next, trying to find a better and better gig. And did that till about 2000. And then in 2000, I made the conscious decision to quit the road and be a full-time session guy, which is a tough switch because you can be making decent money on the road, but I knew that wasn't the life for me because I'm not much of a road dog, So I knew that staying home and being a session guy would be a better fit for my personality, and I did that. And no looking back. So that's been 25 years of being a full-time studio guy.
Did you know anyone in Nashville? You must have.
One guy.
Okay.
One guy. Yeah. Well, actually, two guys. And I used to just go out and see bands and try to find out about any auditions that I could possibly hear about. And ask anybody. I would ask everyone I met, "Do you know about any auditions? I'm looking for a gig." And I ended up. My first gig was replacing Bob Britt in a guy's band called Lionel Cartwright. Do you know Lionel?
Yeah, for the name, yeah.
Yeah, and $250 a night, first tour bus. I was thrilled to have it. I was thrilled to be there. I'd never been on a tour bus before, green as could be. I was just so glad to be doing something that wasn't a cover band gig, something professional, And I still think that even in 2024, it's pretty easy for a young knucklehead like me at that time to come here and get a decent road gig. It's not that hard. If you can play your instrument, there's tons of opportunities. Everybody wants to go out on the road, and they need a guy to fill that spot. Land of opportunity.
Yeah.
Nashville is. Lots of opportunities for musicians. It may not be a great money gig or anything like that, but you can get a gig here if you can play. You know what I mean? It's still that way.
Yeah.
It hasn't changed.
Guthrie, what about you? When did you make the leap?
Man, I showed up here right around 2000, 2001. And I'm born and raised on the Floribama Gulf Coast. And I got lucky with just an amazing family down there that my uncle is a self-taught musician. I'm an only child, so I hung out with him, my dad's youngest brother, every day, you know, and really idolized him. He's still is a lovable guy. Self-taught musician, not on a Nashville level now looking back, but the quality of music that was in the house. My mom and dad don't play, but through Jerry Trapp, my Uncle Jerry, we were listening to like a lot of what Tom likes to refer to as high in musical nutrients.
Yeah.
You know, great songwriters, great instrumentalists, and a lot of bluegrass and folk music and just good songs. I wasn't raised on top 40 radio or the Beatles or Led Zeppelin. I didn't know what those hard rock bands even sounded like, you know? And so it was like a lot of Jackson Browne, Van Morrison, Bob Dylan, John Prine, and a lot of the Nashville songwriters. And so the link to Nashville for me, where I got really lucky, in addition to the family upbringing with a lot of parties, you know, I remember being a little kid and my mom and dad we'd go to these picking parties where there'd be a bunch of people in a big circle drinking and partying, but it always revolved around music. And there would always be these big circles in the living room and people playing Irish music and bluegrass and singing songs and going late into the night. But it always was kind of a family friendly environment it always revolved around music, even if people were smoking weed and doing who knows whatever else. The link was that was always music around. And so my dad would throw me over his shoulder. I'd fall asleep and we'd jump in the car and drive 30 minutes out of Pensacola, Florida, back over to Lillian, Alabama. And we went to all these parties. And there's a bunch of crazy stories, of course, but the thread that was the cool link from that part of the Gulf Coast to Nashville was a festival at the Floribama Lounge called the Frank Brown International Songwriters Festival. And at that point, it was the biggest songwriters festival, and it would go for like 2 weeks. And all these songwriters would come down to the Floribama, and we'd go to the beach house after the club closed down at 3 o'clock in the morning. We'd go to the beach house and stay open until 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning. I was like 13 years old, 12, 13 years old. And my dad would take me out there. We knew the owner of the club. My aunt was the accountant out there for 40 years. And these guys that we'd sit around this table with playing the mandolin and some acoustic guitar at that point were guys like Red Lane and Hank Cochran and Mickey Newberry and Larry John Wilson and Gove Scrivener and Chuck Cannon and all these cats would come down and play at this festival. And if you want to get musicians to show up, give them a good destination to go to. So who didn't want to go play a beach bar on the Gulf of Mexico? You know, it's like a vacation. So we'd go jam with these guys afterwards, you know. And so we met Gove Scrivener, and he brought me up here in the mid-'90s to record on some records with him. And that's when I met Nancy Griffith and her band and John Prine and all these cats, Mark Howard and Fergie and Cowboy Jack Clement. And I got to be friends with those guys. And then, you know, that kind of forged my way here in Nashville a little bit, just getting to be kind of knowing what I consider at that point kind of the root system of Nashville, like the old guys, you know, all my friends have always been 60 and 70 years old, because I always say that you don't get to be that cool until you get to be that old.
Yeah. I didn't know you knew Grove Sugar. And
so all those cats, you know, but my family is what really got the music going, because I don't know if you're born with talent or not, but you're definitely a product of your environment, you know. And so having all that great, really good music around the house and playing those, like Tom, growing up and playing in bars and hands-on with my uncle after school and just jumping in and getting your hands dirty without knowing anything about any music theory or anything like that at that point. But yeah. I think just getting in and getting going, and that kind of helped me out in Nashville, where I played with Don Kelly at Roberts for all those years, and then started my first gig when I climbed on a tour bus was replacing Jed Hughes and Patty Lovelace's band when Jed went on to do his solo career. And played with Patty, and it was a perfect fit because she did a lot of bluegrass in her set and really high quality songs. And then I toured with Jerry Douglas for a bunch of years and played on some of his records. And Patty would actually use some of the band, her live band, on her records. So some of the first sessions I did in Nashville were with Albert Lee and Emery Gordy and Russ Paul and Owen Hale and these guys. And I didn't know shit. I just was, I showed up and I just kept showing up for 25 years. And now here we are talking to you, my favorite magazine, Record Journal.
Yeah, man.
With my favorite guitar player in the world right here, Uncle Larry.
How often do you two actually hang out? Like, is this a pretty regular occurrence?
Yeah.
It happens more now than ever, which is awesome. And we've got our favorite bass player standing in the kitchen over here.
Yeah, we should have
Steve
him
Mackey,
on.
man. We got to get
show.
Steve Mackey on here in just a second. Come on.
We'll get him on when we talk about the record. How's that?
Okay, perfect.
What, you've been there, you guys make it seem easy. It's not probably an easy town to be successful in. Like, you've probably met countless young guns who come and they last 6 months and then they hightail it back home or head to New York or LA. What's like the number one mistake people make when they move to Nashville, like expectation wise?
I'll tell you exactly what it is. It's when they come to your gig and ask you why you aren't getting them up to sit in because they're as good as you are or better. I've had people say that to me before. Those guys are done.
Oh, man.
And that's happened before. So I'd say the attitude and the hang factor is paramount, right?
It is. I wish I could answer that question a little better, but ever since I had kids, I hardly ever go out. I'm a hermit, and I don't get to meet a lot of young guys. But he's always out, doing gigs, and he gets to meet a lot of people. But all I ever do is see guys in studio that are always older guys like me, But I don't really know how many young guys come here and have to turn around and come back home. I wouldn't know that. But I do think that you definitely have to be humble when you come here because there's a lot to learn. And if most people instinctively know that, but if they don't know that, it's very bad. Mm-hmm. It's there's so much history here. This town is like a state park preserved for music. People care about ancient forms of music here that are completely forgotten everywhere else in the world. So you have to respect that. This is the only place you can tell people you're a musician and they won't automatically assume you're a loser.
That's so true.
Right? It's like musicians are actually respected here.
It's like the little old lady on the airplane when she sees your guitar case and she goes, I hope you make it one day.
Yeah. Where I came from, if you told somebody you're a musician, they just assumed you were joking and like, what do you really do for a living?
Yeah. I get it.
Yeah.
So obviously the music world has changed. How people find music, how people geek out on guitars has changed a lot. You guys both have like incredible YouTube channels, amongst other things. Like what's a week in the life look like? Are weeks similar? Tom, you got kids, so maybe they do look similar from week to week, but like, how do you divide up your time?
Yeah, that's what I'm working on the most. It's difficult because I have a tendency to be a bit of a workaholic, especially in my 30s and 40s. I was always working, and I'm kind of glad I didn't have kids back in those days because I would have been one of those guys that missed their kids' whole childhood. And I had my first kid at 44. And at that point, I was ready to reflect a little more and not work as hard. And it's been great because I was actually more planted and more ready to have a kid at that point. But I don't do nearly as many sessions now as I used to. I might have, in a 7-day week, I might have 3 days of sessions. I try to keep the weekends open. I don't work on weekends because I just want to be able to hang out with the kids. I think that's a good policy for any parent to adopt. Don't work on weekends. And so Monday through Friday, I might have 3 days of sessions. And then the other 2 days are just kind of like life maintenance, whatever you got to do, errands and things like that. I only do my YouTube videos when I'm really in the mood to do one. I think that's the key. Like, I'll never do one unless I'm in the mood to do it. Like, it's such a vibe. The whole thing is so spontaneous that if I'm not feeling it, I won't make one. You know, I do it when I'm feeling, I guess, social.
Yeah.
Right.
100%.
And so that maybe that's one of the reasons I might seem to be a happy person, because you only see that side there, but there's a whole
only
other
the
side.
manic moments.
Yeah, there's the guy that doesn't want to make the videos, who's a bit moodier.
You should do a second YouTube channel, and you only do them when you don't want to do them.
Well, the social media aspect has arranged people so that they only show the good side of their life, right?
Right. Yeah.
What was I mean, I'm assuming it's pretty low key, and it's just you and maybe an iPhone, and you're not, you know, maybe you have a whole rig with like good mics and everything.
It's just an iPhone.
I bought him a tripod. He won't even use that.
I actually started using it. I love it. I busted it out the other day for the first time. Yeah.
So what was the inspiration there to start that? Because I mean, it's huge. It's got this, and it's sort of counter to, you know, you guys were just on Rick Beato's thing, like it's counter to all the, like, I'm going to have a beautiful black backdrop and the amps are all going to be lit up, and I'm going to, you know, be professional and look like I should be on NPR or something.
Yeah, we're like the indie version of Rick Beato with about 1/1,000,000th of the subscribers he has.
Apparently those lights are working.
Yeah. Apparently the lights do help.
The old version
no,
that
like,
doesn't
what,
make any money or have any subscribers.
what was that first video? Why'd you do it?
Well, it was a funny story because I had put up probably half a dozen random clips of me playing music all the way back to the inception of YouTube. There was about half a dozen videos of me just playing some random shit. And I knew how to upload a video, which was a big step for a guy who doesn't have any tech capabilities whatsoever. So when we had the first day of quarantine, March 2020, I was on the phone with a friend of mine named Steve Marcantonio, who's an old engineer friend of mine, and he was all depressed. What are we going to do, Tommy? We're all stuck at home now. What are we going to do, man? And right when we were hanging up, he said, you ought to make a video of you playing guitar and put it on YouTube and cheer people up. And I just laughed and blew it off like I always do. And then hours later, I started thinking about it, and I had nothing else to do anyway, because I don't have a home studio or anything like everyone else that's normal. So I did it, and it got receptive. Like, I was surprised that it got received so well, because I didn't even know anybody was actually looking at my videos from the previous ones I'd done. So like overnight, the thing started getting all kind of, people talking about it. Because I think people had sort of wondered, who is this guy? He's 50 years old and he's never does interviews but he played on a lot of records. So they knew who I was, but they were kind of like, if they searched for me, there was no videos or anything or to choose from, you know?
Yeah.
So, at first I was very awkward and uncomfortable about doing it, because it's definitely not my nature to do something like that, but I kind of got used to it. And after the first month, it started seeming normal. So I just kept doing it, you know? My ex-wife, my beloved ex-wife, actually got mad at how easy it happened, because she was trying to do that type of stuff, you know, consciously. And she was like, I can't believe it. I've been working on this shit for years, and you just go out there in one day and do what I've been trying to do. And, joking, of course, but that was funny, because it was all started as a joke. It was never supposed to be anything. And Steve Mackey, our beloved bass player, was one of the first people to start watching it. And I couldn't believe that any right-minded person would sit and watch it. And
That's awesome.
It's been good. You know, I've learned a lot from doing it, because the people that watch it make comments, and they're actually some of them are really intelligent, and they point out things that I probably should know. And I get a lot of good advice through the comment bin. People are really, they're all old guys like me, and they've been through a lot in life, and they have some good advice,
Yeah.
And I openly share my life with them. I don't know why I chose to do that, but they always have like, well, you should consider this. And if I sometimes listen to their advice, it actually is very useful. They're pretty good,
That's great. That's awesome.
But there's a lot of numbskulls too, but I'm talking about the good ones,
Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, do you started using the tripod? Do you pay attention at all to like YouTube metrics, or you must be making some money off these?
Make a little bit. Most of the money that I make comes from people's kind donations.
Yeah. They're
very cool about being generous. I think they appreciate the fact that I'm doing it for free. I know same with him, and they feel like throwing something in the tip jar because I'm giving something that I don't have to be given, for free. And I think they appreciate that. And it's been quite a surprise to see how generous people out there in the internet land are.
Yeah.
They're very generous. Like if they feel like they're getting something that they can use, they'll gladly throw something in the tip jar. And I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it is the fact that we are working musicians and lifers, and we're not trying to only use YouTube or selling courses to make our living. It just 100% that. Mm-hmm. So in a way, we kind of the material is always going to be authentic, and whatever we're talking about is going to be authentic, and it comes from Tom having way more experience than me, but now at 45 years old, having enough experience where I at least can shed a little bit of light on something. I think it comes from being authentic and not really worried about I don't want to be in my house for 14 hours a day editing videos and learning how to use cameras and lighting and stuff like that. It's good enough. It doesn't distort. It's not blurry. And luckily we have the iPhone, which allows us to do that. But at the end of the day, it's authentic. And I think that's what people are kind of looking for. Is there's not a lot of guys that are working pros are doing that, without really trying to sell something. I mean, I started doing it because Brett Papa told me, years back, he goes, man, you should start doing a YouTube channel. I thought, okay, well, sure, I'll try that. And it's helped. I mean, it helps make a living. It helps get the word out. I mean, Tom's obviously created just an amazing cult following, and it translates into going to, we've been going to New York and playing with the trio and selling out 2 nights at the Bitter End, which I never thought would be happening. But a lot of it is because of that YouTube channel, and
it's opened a lot of doors.
It's opened a lot of doors. Yeah. And it works.
I would have never got to make a record with Dean DeLeo, for example, if I had never done it. I've met him through YouTube.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. Guthrie, you've got, you've been using a tripod a little longer than Tom, I think. And you are such a good, teacher of explaining music theory, guitar playing. Like, how much planning do you do? Do you think okay, next week on Tuesday, I'm going to do something on this? Or is it a pretty spur of the moment too?
Totally spur of the moment, man. I'm not organized at all. And I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't know anything about music as far as theory or anything like that. So I think not knowing what you're doing actually makes you a better teacher, because you're able to kind of get right to it,
Yeah.
And maybe that's what's resonating with some of these people. And I honestly believe that. But I just it's kind of the same with Tom. And if I don't feel like doing a YouTube video and going and talking to thin air, then I don't do it. But if I am on the couch and I've got a couple hours where I'm not really doing anything, I might think of something and go, okay, cool, let's go up and do something. Or if I think of something that might be a cool idea to show somebody, I might write it down on a piece of paper and wait till I'm feeling good to go do it. But he said, man, you're not always motivated I don't want that to feel like a job, because it's really not our job.
Rick Beato told me in the really early days when I first started, he said, if you do this right, you're a natural for this. You won't have to ever do another session again. And I said, well, I don't want that life. I'd like doing sessions. I would rather be a working musician who actually has a little side YouTube channel than a YouTuber, even though I'm not saying that in a negative way. There's nothing wrong with being a YouTuber. It's a great way to make a living, but I would much rather be down in the snake pit than than above the snake pit talking about what it's like down there. I like to be in the muck, working, playing music, and then happen to mention it. I think I base a lot of my stuff on an old article that Tommy Tedesco used to write in the Guitar Player magazine. You remember that?
Yeah.
He did a quick little article every month that was like a studio log where he would talk about, some sessions that he did, and he would even say the wages that he made. You remember that?
Yeah.
And he'd talk about who was on the session. Like I think of it more like a document of whatever's going on in my career than anything. And like I said in the Rick Beato thing, I'm not going to cry again, but it's a journal for my kids, is what it is. But so when they get older, they'll know what I was all about.
Totally.
Because that's a selfish thing in my regard. I feel like I have to. I have to tell them who I was.
That's a beautiful thing, man.
Yeah,
well,
you got stories.
And this is a touchy subject, but I will say this: it's a little different to be a working lifer musician and to have a social media presence, because what happens is there's no really polite way to say this other than the young kids that are YouTube and Instagram guitar players, which I don't really know what that means, but they don't really have any experience. They didn't grow up playing in bars for years and years and years and years. I mean, lots of fucking gigs, man. Mm-hmm. And so what happens is, I think what people aren't realizing is, and they'll argue, these youngsters will argue with you to the death that, like, well, I'm making a living playing the guitar just like you. And I go, well, it's a little different, because they started with social media and now they need to gain 30 or 40 years of experience. Guys like us, and I'm always the young cat, but we have now 35, 40 years of experience, and we just sprinkled this social media stuff on top because it's undeniably, and it's not going anywhere, and it helps us get our music out to the world. Being an independent record, that we released is like the epitome of an independent record. We paid for it ourselves. We came and recorded this music with no corporate pressure or worried about what our friends were going to think. We just did it for the sheer love of music and the people that we like being in a room with and hanging out with, and have some beers, have some laughs. And what ended up happening was, dude, we're really proud of this record. But that's the only way I've been able to eloquently have that argument when people go, well, I'm on Instagram and I'm a working guitar player. It's like, well, there's a difference between somebody that's been in the trenches and has that experience. And I think that's what's translating to YouTube. And I think at the end of the day, the word is, it's authenticity, and I can sleep well at night knowing that I'm a shameless self-promoter because I want to make a good living, but I can sleep well knowing that we're not selling bullshit. Yeah. Tom goes up and turns on his YouTube channel, wakes up first thing in the morning and doesn't have anything planned out or rehearsed or worked up or any of that stuff. He's going to sit down and grab his guitar, and whatever he plays and whatever he starts talking about, you can sure as shit bet your ass that it's going to be fucking real and authentic every single time.
Yeah.
And that's what people are loving.
Totally. I mean, and so much of YouTube now is, these demo videos, and you guys don't do any of that. You guys just talk about your day.
I have a question.
Yeah, I'm not by any means saying that that's better or worse.
No, I know. Yeah.
It is, I think, a little bit of a void that people are digging that,
Totally.
Could I ask Guthrie an official question on the air?
Of course. Go ahead, Tom.
What is your biggest pet peeve of your whole YouTube experience?
I would just say people that don't really get it. They're not really getting where we're coming from, of this kind of loose off the cuff thing. And like, hey man, we're not really on here trying to be, a bunch of names that I'm not going to mention, but guys with, millions of subscribers. But dude, they've got, they've got amazing cameras and everything looks and sounds incredible. And they've done these beautiful cinematic documentary quality videos. Well, man, the brutal reality is like Tom said, I don't want to be sitting in my room editing videos. I want to be doing a little bit of that on the iPhone for 20 minutes, put it up there. Hopefully somebody gets something out of it. And then, man, I'm rocking on to try to book the trio and go play some. I love playing live music with that trio. That's what my happy place is. And doing what we're going to do when we hang up with you, we're going to get Steve Mackey and Tom and me and Matty Alger, the great drummer that owns this studio. And we're going to close this laptop and we're going to get back into cutting this song that we're gonna do. So that's what it's about.
Tom, have you ever started recording a video and then just scrapped it?
Oh God, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I hate. I mean, I'm not just saying this to sound like humble. I hate 99% of the things I play, and I'm looking for that 1%. I'll sit and play and hate 99% of it, and if I find 1% of it, something that I actually like, I'm so happy to find it, and I'll base a whole video on that 1% because I'm so bored of all my tricks and all the things I've been doing all these years. I'm looking for that 1%, something that actually inspires me and makes me go, "Oh, that was cool." You know, I mean, it's hard to find something cool in your own playing, you know, because we know what. I don't know if you struggle with that, but I just feel like I've heard myself. I've heard myself too much.
This record that we did is the only thing I've ever wanted to hear more than once.
Yeah. Well, let's get into that.
But I've recorded on.
Let's get into that because you guys have recorded.
This might be a good time to bring in Steve Mackey. Can we get a
sure?
Let's do it.
Between the two or three of you, you guys have played in every probably Nashville studio imaginable, large and small, with a whole myriad of settings. When you guys decided to make in stereo and do your own thing, like what was the vibe you were going for, both in the studio and musically?
We like cozy places,
and we didn't know what we were going for.
We like cozy places. Some studios feel very corporate, and some studios feel very sort of creative, and the instruments are already set up. It's really easy to create here. Everything's already set up. There's instruments laying around. If you get an idea, you just go do it. Some of these big studios, anytime you get an idea, you got to set everything up. I like this place because it's musical, right? Shit's plugged in. And these are the kind of studios that I function best in. Those big, giant corporate studios can be very cool, but they're not conducive to creating the way a small indie studio like this is. There's instruments laying around everywhere. Mm-hmm. Get up in here. This is Steve Mackey.
Hey, Steve.
Crucial part of not just this record, but the record, all my stuff, everything.
Yeah, the whole thing, just like we did.
All three projects that I've made records on, he's been the guy. I just realized that.
Yeah, right.
Wow. Yeah. So the Truth the Witch record he played on, my solo record he played on, and
original Corona.
Yeah, and I appreciated the fact that he watched the videos so much that I was like, there was no other choice. I just thought,
yeah. At the time, we were locked down.
Yeah.
This is our community. It really is a pretty tight knit, insular kind of thing sometimes. And so we were all locked down. And so when I saw the first Corona lessons videos that Book did, my first impression was, oh, this is just like we're hanging. This is like, it's a hang. It's Book exactly like when we're in the studio. There's really no difference. So, it was all entirely selfish for me. It was just a hang.
But there was a few other close friend of mine, bass players, who were like, yeah, gee, thanks a lot for getting Mackey on the record, like, and talking shit. But he was my guy right from the beginning. There was no other choice. I've got a lot of good friend bass players that are amazing players that I love dearly. But for some reason, you're my guy on this.
It fits.
Yeah, it's a good fit. And
you did that record with Dean, the Trip the Witch record, and that was sort of, that came before this, obviously. Did that sort of open your eyes of like, oh, I need to do one of these with Guthrie?
For 50 years, I never made a record of my own. I was always just helping other people. And I'll mention again, my dear beloved ex-wife used to always encourage me, why don't you just make a record? For God's sakes, you've got all these ideas. You always hear me playing around the house, making up stuff. And I was like, nobody likes instrumental records. Nobody's going to want to hear that, because I was always like of the mindset that if it didn't have lyrics, it wasn't a song. But I've gotten a bit older and appreciate instrumental music more than I ever did. I think as long as you make it interesting, it's got to have a melody. It's got to be like a song. It can't just be a bunch of fucking wanking. You know what I mean? My goal for all three of the records that I've made is, like I've said 1,000 times, these guys have heard me say, I just want to make records that you could put on at a cool party in the background and not have everybody go, shut that off. Just something that you could play in the background that wouldn't piss off the women or just create some vibe. That's all I've been trying to do. I don't really like, technical instrumental records. I don't really want to hear somebody playing as technically as they can. I like music, I'm sure these guys would agree.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah.
How much of this record was fleshed out before you walked into the recording studio? Like, I some of these tracks, like the Cascade Park, I'm like, this had to have been written beforehand. Like,
no, we did, a lot of it came from riffs he had laying around, riffs I had laying around. I would just play something and go, you like this? And he'd go, yeah, great. And then he'd add something to it, and that was it, and vice versa.
So the record took 2 years to get out, but we recorded the music in, a couple 2 or 3 day chunks. But I remember one time we walked into this studio. I live right down the street, and we walked in, and we went into the control room right here, and everybody else was setting up, and Tom looked at me and he goes, man, you got any ideas? I went, no. And I looked at him, I said, what about you? He goes, no, not really. And we grabbed an acoustic and went in there, and we came up with a couple things that we ended up recording,
That's where the album cover came from.
Now, I'm not patting us on the back for doing that. I'm just saying that was fun, because it's kind of a challenge, but you're going to come out okay on the other side,
Man, we just got to hold the vinyl in our hands for the first time today. After all this time waiting, we got to hold the physical record in our hands. What a thrill. You should show it to him.
Yeah, let's do it.
I mean, like, we did the 180 gram vinyl and the whole bit. And I love the cover that his guy did. His friend made the cover.
I love it.
Man, it's very cool. It's a gatefold, so you can roll your joints in the inside. It's the whole thing.
So who's got like the ultimate turntable audiophile setup that you're going to be able to play this on?
Yeah, this is the first one here. This is a collector's item. Guthrie's keeping that.
In the control room, Matt's got a really nice turntable, and of course his beautiful board and speakers that we just listened to. It sounds good.
Yeah.
And man, these guys, Brandon Bell, who mixed and recorded this record, and Eric Kahn that mastered. I mean, these guys are amazing. So it sounds good.
Yeah, it turned out good.
Yeah,
we like it.
So you guys went over some of this stuff, I think, with Rick, but like, you're going into these studios, the one you're in right now, I see all the wall of guitars. Like, what are you bringing when it's your own record to the studio where you're like, I gotta play this guitar or this amp or these pedals?
Well, I think one of the cool things about this record that people probably would not guess is that we both used really, really small amps. And I use the same guitar on the whole record. Tom knows I'm the guy I get one guitar and play it until the wheels fall off, and then I get in a panic and try to find something else. I played the Dano Castratelli that I got from him on the record, and my little pedal board with basically a Nobles and a tremolo and a Strymon Brigadier delay, and that was it. No big amps,
Yeah, all you really need is your pedal board. That's the only thing that you can't. That's the same for a live gig. Like, if I have to do a backline rental live gig, like whatever it may be, the only thing I bring is a pedal board, because you can't rent that. You can rent a decent guitar and a decent amp, but pedal boards are so personal. You can't just rent a board that works. So I'll actually drag a pedal board through the fucking airport faster than I will a guitar, because I can play any guitar, but I I can't rent that pedal board.
Right.
And the pedals are so crucial to the way I play, the volume pedal and the whole bit. I have to have it. So I can't, that's what I worry about more than anything. It's just that even if it's a very small board, there's a couple things on there that I have to play, you know.
What are what are for you, Tom, like the
just
3 or 4 essentials? Like what are the actual pedals?
Overdrive, an EQ, a volume pedal, and a delay. I got to have those 4 things, and a tuner. Those 5 things. Yeah.
And those are from multiple different brands, or are you a purist about?
Yeah, it could be anything, but you know, there's our favorites, of course. But that concept, an overdrive, an EQ, a delay, and a tuner, and a volume pedal. I have to have that. I can get by without a volume pedal, but I hate it. I'm way better with a volume pedal.
And and of your vast guitar collection, what did you bring for in stereo?
Well, I used that old 58 burst on a lot of it, which almost makes recording too easy. That guitar sounds so good through anything that it's like cheating. It's too good. It spoils you for everything else.
And what's the story with your burst? I'm not sure I know.
It's a long story that let's just say I would have never been able to get it under any circumstances without a very kind, generous move by a friend of mine who's got an unbelievable guitar collection. He let me borrow the guitar for over a year, and he let me finance it. I would have never been able to just go out and buy a burst without this guy's kindness and being willing to work with me on this. You know, I would have never been able to get it, and I really owe a lot to him because I would have never been able to just get the cash together to go out and just buy that guitar. You know what I mean? I had to make it in payments and all that stuff that would be very difficult to do if you were just trying to buy from a store. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did it come from, or maybe you don't want to talk about it, did a famous person once own it?
No, but I have been able to find the original owner, believe it or not.
Oh, that's cool.
Through some, because you know how bursts are, they're like a cult, you know.
Yeah.
People memorize the serial numbers because they're so rare and coveted. You know, there's only 1,700 ever made. Mine is unique in the fact that it had 3 mailbox letters on the upper horn up by the neck pickup. So a guy sent me a black and white photo from the late 50s of a guy holding a burst with those 3 mailbox letters in the exact place. I knew it was that guitar. So I didn't even know you could do this, but you could do a reverse Google image thing. So somebody reverse searched the image and found it linked to a guy's website named Carl Chambers, who actually was a songwriter in Nashville who ended up playing with the Bellamy Brothers.
That is amazing.
So that's that guitar. And then I also have a photo of it in the 80s that somebody took when it still had red in, because all the red's faded out. And you could clearly see the shadows from the mailbox letters. Wow. So I call it the mailbox burst, you know, because you have to name a burst, you know. They all have to have names, right?
That's awesome.
But yeah, it's pretty cool to find the original owner and at least know who bought that guitar new, you know?
Yeah. Tom, didn't you own a vintage store? Didn't you own a guitar store for a while?
I just had a used consignment music store for 3 years with a friend of mine.
How'd that go?
We would get the occasional nice vintage piece in, but mostly it was just working man's gear.
Okay.
You know? Yeah.
Too much work?
Great store, man.
It was fun. Yeah, I do miss having a music store, and I would love to do it again someday. I wish I had 2 clones so they could do all the stuff that I really want to do that I'm too busy to do.
That was a great music store, man. It was such a good hang. They'd be in there playing poker and throwing darts and drinking beer.
Oh yeah, gambling.
We'd show up.
A lot of gambling going on in there.
Okay.
We would play. I would be
High
the
stakes?
house. We would play blackjack all day.
And the best name, it was called Second Gear.
Yeah.
Which he's a car guy, so it made sense, you know.
Makes perfect sense. Guthrie, does your guitar monogamy prevent you from enjoying going into a good guitar store?
Good question.
You know,
That's a really good question.
really good question.
Yeah.
So I had a buddy in town a couple days ago, and we did go to Carter's and Gruen just to show them all the crazy inventory and everything. And man, there's so much stuff that I would have to sit down and play everything. I mean, other than the obvious things, but I'd have to play everything in there it would take a couple days to go through everything and try to find something that I could use. And man, these days, I mean, the way things are priced, I mean, I would have to really be in love with something. And it's getting hard to find good guitars.
And you got to try stuff in the heat of battle before you know if it's any good or not. You'd have to take it to a couple of gigs,
right? I have
to
to
even
take
see.
it to the gig,
Yeah.
I mean, I was guilty of that when I first moved to Nashville. Everything sounds good in the music store,
Right.
but you go to the gig and you're like, well, this is just not going to work.
Right. Right.
I have I don't know what it is, man, but I am not the guy that has good luck finding great instruments. I'm not the guy,
He gets used to the thing that he likes, and he's got to have it, which is great, I think. That's great. Yeah.
Do you cycle through amps and pedals more often, or are you kind of the same way there too?
Not a whole lot. The pedals, I'm very minimalist when it comes to pedals. RC Booster, old Nobles, vintage Nobles that he made famous here, and I like that overdrive because we can't really tell. A lot of people in the crowd, they always go, "Man, you played clean all night." And I thought, well, God, I had this overdrive on, and it's such a natural, great feeling pedal that I'm kind of spoiled on that. And I'm not a high gain player anyway, but so I'll use the Nobles pedal and a little bit of delay and stuff like that. But I don't really rely. The only thing that I rely on that I have to have is some sort of Fender amp with reverb. I can't do anything. I am useless without reverb. I have to have a little reverb, man.
We have amongst our family of podcasts, we do one called The Truth About Vintage Amps, which is like car talk for tube amps. I'm the co-host. I'm the dumb guy on the show. What is the state of affairs in Nashville with like actual tube amps versus all the modeling stuff? Like where are things headed? What do you guys use?
I would rather quit guitar than play through a modeling amp. So I am on I suppose it'd be very off-brand for me to use anything like a Kemper or Fractal. I've had to do that occasionally in a couple of sessions when it was the only option and the guy couldn't mic a tube amp. And it's an absolute nightmare for me. I would rather quit guitar. I play through the same tube amps I've always used. And to me, all that modeling stuff is an absolute joke. And I think it's all a joke. And I think there's a lot of people that are sort of old school guys that sort of agree, like, but I understand why people use that stuff. And I understand the convenience of it and the ease of use and all that, but I would rather quit guitar than have to do that. This is not my style at all, and I love real amps, and I think you're in the same boat.
Exact same boat, man. I couldn't look at myself in the mirror if I played through a modeling amp, man. I can't do it.
But are you ever asked? I mean, as hired guns, do you ever just go into a studio and somebody's like, "Let's just do this. It'll be easier and quieter."
It's happened a couple times, and the only way I would even agree to it is if it was the only option, because it was impossible to mic an amp. And man, it's tough. It just sounds like shit, and it makes everything feel different, and I do not like it at all. I'm not a fan. I like to play direct. I like to take a guitar and plug right into the console. I like doing that a lot. But I don't like modeling amps and all that stuff at all. I don't like it.
Okay. Well, you guys need to be on our amp podcast.
You know what?
Yeah.
There's nothing like plugging into a really nice old Fender amp with a little reverb and just hearing that pure guitar tone where you can feel it, you can hear it. It has the natural compression. Yeah. It's just a great sound. And and I'll go even one more on the simplicity thing for me. And I'm not a session man like Tom, but I don't even like using things that have more than 3 knobs, man. If it's got a digital screen on it, forget it. I mean, I'm totally like a minimalist when it comes to that stuff because my sound has always been kind of pure, clean tone kind of stuff anyway. But I mean, I don't know, man. It's just, I don't want to be thinking about all my option anxiety. Do I have the switch right? Do I have this right? This right? It's like, man, let's just get a nice. I have a thing. If you go to a music store and you grab a guitar and you have to talk yourself into it, or you have to talk yourself into a pedal because somebody else told you you should get it, or an amp. If you can't dial up a sound that's pleasing and makes you want to keep playing it in a matter of a couple seconds, I'm out. I'm on to the next thing.
Yeah. My biggest pet peeve with the whole YouTube thing is people who have never experienced the beauty of real vintage guitars talking shit on vintage guitars. It is my number one pet peeve. Old guitars, most of the time, are better than new guitars because of the wood. It's no other reason. It's just better wood. And people will die on the hill thinking that a reissue is as good as a 58 burst. And it's just not. And I am not a vintage guitar snob. I will try anything. And I play some new guitars, but as a guy who's tried both extensively, I can promise you there's a big fucking difference between a 58 burst and a reissue. And people, I don't mind. I realize that vintage guitars are way too expensive and I don't like it either. But my problem is when people talk shit on vintage out of some kind of spite or jealousy. Because they think it's a myth, or they think I had one guy say one time that you're buying a memory. That is not true. I'm buying a better instrument. It's better wood. That wood was 100 years old when Gibson built that guitar in 1958. Mm-hmm. It's real wood. It's way better than the shit they use now. And you could change pickups, you could do all that stuff. But I'm more interested in the soul of the actual instrument, the wood, mm-hmm. and the way that it resonates, and the way that the point of contact, the way it drives, I should say. And there's just there's no argument. I can't even believe that people don't just unanimously agree that vintage guitars are better than new ones. But yet there's still a whole legion of people that talk shit on vintage, and that's my biggest pet peeve. And I know that the people that talking this shit have never even tried the real stuff.
Yeah. You guys have an embarrassment of riches, and that at least two of the stores you mentioned in the past, Gruen and Carter, you can go and actually try primo examples of all this stuff.
And Rumble Seat. Also here's another thing. I don't have I don't have any $70,000 guitars or anything at my house, but I will say this. I think even if you don't have access to those quality vintage instruments, if you do come to Nashville and you're a guitar fanatic, you should go play those $100,000 guitars and feel what they feel like and hear what they sound like, because that's gonna make you make a better decision in purchasing even a lesser valuable instrument. I mean, at least you can hear. Like, I didn't know what a good sounding acoustic sounded like until I came here and started playing some like really expensive Gibson acoustics and Martin acoustics, and now your ear starts hearing that and you go, okay, now I can actually tell the difference between all these Telecasters. Yes, but you got to hear a lot of them before your ear even understands the difference, And the most important thing to realize is that just because it's old doesn't mean it's cool. There's plenty of vintage guitars that are not good examples, but I'm just saying in general, you have a much better chance of finding a great guitar from the golden era between 55 and 64 for electrics than you would finding a new one. And I really think that it's important for people to know just because it's old doesn't mean it's cool. You got to find a good example, and that goes for anything. Even brand new guitars, some are better than others, So I do think that vintage guitars are completely
out of line price-wise. It's embarrassing how much they cost now. And I see why people would hate that. And I see why they would talk shit on that world, because it is ludicrous. And I agree. But if you took the price tag away, I always say, here's in my mind, this is the argument that stops the conversation dead in its tracks. If there was a music store and there was 10 Gibson Southern Jumbos hanging on the rack, 5 of them were from 1949 and 5 of them were brand new, and they were all the exact same price, I promise you that the old ones would go first. From even the most novice player would notice that these are better instruments. And I feel like that argument right there, like, if the price is what's stopping you from buying it, I understand. But to say that it's not a better instrument, just without the price tag in mind, they're better instruments. And I'm not passionate about a lot of things, but I'm very passionate about that. I'm a big believer in that. I just think people should be stop talking shit on vintage guitars. I wish they would. That's my crusade.
Yeah, they should. And my position is, it's kind of like the plumber that has a leaky faucet at his house. It's like, I kind of just, for some reason, I'm using the guitar that it allows me to. I just don't want to be, as long as I'm not inhibited by the limitations of an amp or a guitar, and I'm able to go out of my mind and not think about some inadequacy or something that's not allowing me to just go out of my mind and play music. That's when I get uncomfortable and get squirrely, and I get real neurotic and uncomfortable in that situation, because I just want to plug in and be able to have something that's going to deliver, and be able to just check out and go to my happy place for 2 hours, and then that be it.
That's it. Yep.
Do you? I once interviewed the session legend Bob Bain, and he had like a whole crate that would fit in the back of his trunk of his car with all of his stuff. Tom, do you have like one amp you bring to sessions, or do you just use what's in the studio?
I'll bring an amp, a deluxe reverb or a Princeton reverb. My cartage rig has more stuff, more options. I like old Plexis. I like old Cream Basements and things like that. But if I'm just going to grab an amp and walk out the door to go do a demo, it would be a Princeton reverb or a deluxe reverb.
Yeah.
Like everyone else. It's not unique. Yeah.
But all those sounds that this is the funny thing about this record in stereo is, I think a lot of people that heard that record and they probably imagined like big amps and all this stuff. They're big tones, but all those sounds that Tom got on that whole record were a Princeton reverb.
Yeah. You do a lot with that.
Totally.
Yeah.
Final question. This record is great. Are people going to be able to hear you play it live outside of Nashville? Are you doing any shows?
We just confirmed one,
Yeah.
So I've been lucky enough to go up to New York City every 4 months. We started this last year through our friend Oz Noy. He invited me up to be a guest of his at a couple of his Bitter End shows. We had a great night, sold it out. And the owner said, "Hey, we'd love to have you back." And I said, "Look, we'll come back with a trio, no question about it." So 4 months later, we went back, sold out 2 nights. We just went there last week. We did Berklee College of Music and then did 2 nights at the Bitter End, sold them out. It was an amazing night. And I got on the microphone the second night and I said, "Hey, obviously we're going to come back here if we can in around November." And I said, "I would love to bring, some friends this time and have a, keep ratcheting this thing up every time we come up." And I said, "Would you guys, come back if we brought Uncle Larry and maybe Jed Hughes and a couple other guys?" And they went crazy. "Oh my God, yes!" And then I got a bunch of messages. "Hey, we can't wait for you to come back up." So when I got back to Nashville a couple of days ago, I sent out a text and I thought, man, this is going to take a lot of legwork to get schedules to line up because everybody's so busy, and obviously just trying to get on this interview has taken weeks and weeks. And so I sent out a text message, and oddly enough, like all 6 people involved were like, "Sure, man, let's do it. And it all lined up. So we lined it up. So we're going to go to the Bitter End in New York City, November 18, 19, and 20. And we're going to do me and the trio rhythm section, and then include Tom and Jed and our friend Nick Goverick to sing some great soul songs and some original music. And we're just going to start bringing some of this stuff out to the people. Tom doesn't really like to travel. I don't mind it. I don't have kids or I'm not married or anything. I'm the quintessential bachelor musician at 45 years old. Tom keeps trying to get me to have some kids.
Yes,
but
I do.
I'm not there yet. But so long story even longer is, yes, we're bringing this music out to some people. And my thought about the social media shit is this: it's like, man, look, if we just do social media and we don't bring the actual music to some people that can hear it and see what we do live, we're as bad as some chick putting bikini photos up on Instagram, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, we've got to bring the music to the people in some way. So the answer is yes.
I love it.
Love it.
Well, Guthrie, Tom, I don't want to keep you from the next great song, so I'm going to let you guys go.
Dude, you're a sweetheart, man. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank
and
you.
I'll include links to the record and everything. It's great. And open invite if you ever want to come up to Chicago to the Fretboard Summit. We'll have you there.
This has been the most pleasurable interview I've ever done. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
It is. I'm not kidding.
I can't believe Tom said that, but I'm leaving it in. I hope you enjoyed this chat. I loved it. I had such a blast. Tom and Guthrie, open invite. Come back to any Fretboard Journal podcast we put out or to our Fretboard Summit. Stay tuned, folks. We have even more updates coming at you next week. And if you like the show, as always, please share it with your friends.